today we are going to be using this big piece of equipment, which is called a slab roller. A slab roller basically makes it very easy to make a clay pancake. So we're going to start out with about a pound of clay. You can do 1.3, 1.4-ish pounds. And then we're going to, this is reclaimed, so you definitely want to wedge it quite a lot. Try to get as much of the air out as we can. Like so. Then after you've got your clay kind of in a ball form, we want to start trying to make it into a rectangle. So I'm just going to be tapping it on 4 sides, not top and the bottom, to start to stretch it out. I want it to be pretty close to 5 inches long to start out. So you can see as I'm doing that, it's growing in length. Okay. Now, after you've got it stretched out, you can take the palm of your hand, set it down, and just start flattening it out. It doesn't need to be super flat, but just kind of start. Then there are 2, what we call these blankets. There's 2 pieces of canvas here. You're going to lift up one, put this on the other, so that it is the long way, or the wide way, I guess I should say, on the canvas. Cover it again. These dials here set the thickness for the roller. I already have it set, so you don't need to worry about those. In fact, please just don't mess with them, because they are set so that it's even from side to side. After you have laid that in, then you use this wheel here and you just turn it and gently pull the canvas through. So, stop. Then you can peel the top layer of canvas back and you will be left with your slab, which looks something like this at that point. All right. Okay. Now, if you really are struggling and you get it done and it is not the shape that you want, it's not a good shape to work with at all, you can wedge it back up and probably get one more roll out of that piece of clay before it becomes too dry, and you'd have to just get another piece of clay and reclaim what you have. All right, guys, next step upcoming. All right, part 2. So to do this part, you're gonna need your slab, and then I've got a wear board, but you can use a styrofoam plate, just something to help keep the clay flat. You're also going to need these tools. Now, you might not need the big one, but I grabbed both anyway. These are called ribbon tools. That's because when you carve with them, the clay will look like a clay ribbon, so hence ribbon tool. There's a whole bunch of different sizes and shapes and whatnot in the drawer, so you'll want those. You'll want your fettling knife. You might want a clay knife. That'll be up to you. Those are just the wooden ones. You might want a needle tool. Again, that's up to you. And then you will want a rib. Now, when you get your clay, you'll notice right away that it's got this texture on it that looks like the canvas. And a lot of people, when they're starting out in ceramics, think, oh, that's such a cool texture, and you want to keep it. But it's kind of a faux pas in ceramics to keep your canvas texture, to show your texture when it's from the slab roller from canvas. So you want to use a rib and smooth that out. Or you can use your finger, but the rib will give you a cleaner look. For now, we're only going to worry about the front. Once it's leather hard, you can flip it over and clean up the back as well. That also does a good job of compressing the clay, which is very important when you're using the slab roller, because the slab roller basically stretches the clay on a microscopic level, and just gently pushing down and going over the clay with the rib helps to compress it, which will help prevent cracks. So after you've got your slab cleaned up, then you're going to take your drawing. Now, I am kind of fast forwarding through this part. When you get your paper, you need to fold it and basically make a mini version of your drawing. Now, that's obviously going to mean that you simplify it a lot. So I took my drawing, my big drawing, and I simplified it into the parts that I felt like stood out the most. And I just drew one corner of it. So just one, just one corner like we did before. Then I traced it and I did exactly the same thing that we did with the big version. I just went to the window and I traced the other the other three corners so that I end up with my drawing. And it is a lot more simple than my finished drawing. Also, for your pattern, the only reason that you're drawing your pattern on here is just to help you remember what areas you're going to be leaving alone and not going to do anything to. So it doesn't have to be, really perfect or clean or anything. It's just to help you remember what parts are what. So anyway, after you've got your drawing all finished up, then you're going to lay it on your slab like so. It doesn't really matter either if you make your slab ahead of time and then work on your drawing, or go back and forth, because it's fine if this sets up and gets leather hard while you're working on your drawing. But you're going to set that right on the clay, and if you just kind of hold it for a second, then the moisture from the clay will start to soak into the paper and it will stick pretty well. And then you're going to use your fettling knife and trace it. Just cut it out. If you notice when I am cutting, I'm going all the way straight through to the edge. I'm not trying to turn around the corners. You won't get a clean cut that way. Just going all the way through. Just like so. Now, you are not going to want to get rid of your scraps. So these pieces you can peel off, but just set them aside so that you can use them for any pieces that you want to scratch wet weld later. Don't scrap them yet. Unless they're little, things like that you can't use. All right, so I've got my little stack here and I'm just gonna set them aside. All right, so there's my tile. Now this is easier to do if your tile is a little bit leather hard. So I actually have an extra tile that I made earlier. So I'm going to take this one and set it aside for right now. And I'm going to switch to my other one. Now this one I never smoothed out. So I'm going to do that first. Don't want that slab roller canvas texture. All right. Now, like I said earlier, this clay is reclaimed, so you might find that there's something like weird in it. This was reclaimed from before my time here. So like mine has this little red streak going through the clay. You can't even really see it on the camera. We're just going to go with it. We can cover it up later with paint or glaze or something else. All right, so we'll say that's pretty good. Then your paper can lay on top. And you want to use a pencil that is not super sharp, or you can use a mechanical pencil, but don't put the lead out. So that's usually what I do. I'll use a mechanical pencil, but the lead is not out. And I am going to trace over my design. Now, this paper that we're using today is old sketchbook paper. It's a little bit heavier than the paper that we used last week. Or then it's heavier than computer paper. That is so that it doesn't completely fall apart when you're tracing. I'm not tracing the pattern, I'm just tracing the outline. The goal being to make slight dents in the clay underneath the paper. So you really don't want your design to be overly complicated. Also, if you notice, I'm holding my pencil at a pretty steep angle. I'm not holding it straight up and down. That helps again to keep it from cutting through the paper. If it does tear a little bit through the paper, it's not a big deal, but we just want to try to mostly keep the drawing intact because it's helpful to have it later. And you can kind of feel too with your finger to see if you've gotten everything. All right, then to check and make sure that you've gotten everything traced, keep a hand on one side so that if you miss something, you can lay the paper back down and get it in the same place. And then just gently peel it up. Okay, I'm just gonna check. Looks like I've got everything, so I can go ahead and take it off. I'm still not done with this, so I'm gonna lay it aside for right now. Then I'm also gonna just take this whole slab and set that just slightly aside for now as well. Now I have my scraps from when I made this tile, so these are leather hard now as well. I want to use my scraps to make the shapes that I need to cut out, like these areas that are black. So I'm just gonna set this on the clay and do the same thing. Try to trace without tearing up the paper. And I know I need 4 of those, so I'm gonna move it down and trace again. Just kind of try to be economical about your clay. Okay, there's 2. Let's see if I can get 2 more out of this piece. I'm not sure if I'll make it or not. Three. Nope, I'm gonna have to get another one. That's all right. That's why we keep them. All right. Then when you cut these out, again, just like when you cut out the tile itself, instead of trying to cut, in such a way that you would have to like cut to an end and then flip your tool around, just cut them out from large pieces. So I'm going to cut them apart from each other first. Like so, and then I can be a little bit more intentional and deliberate. Careful. Hopefully by now you've realized that it is a lot easier to work with fine detail in clay when it is leather hard. So when you are ready to cut your pieces that you're going to add, I recommend letting them get a little bit firmer so that they're much easier to work with. So I would continue on and I would cut these other 3 out as well. For now, I'm just going to set them aside and then I'll work on them later. I'm just going to use one so that I can show you what to do. So then you're going to use your drawing kind of as your guide, as your reference, in helping you remember where things go. I like to add my pieces that I'm scratch wet welding into place first, and then I do my carving after that. So this I know needs to go right about there, according to my drawing. This area here matches this area here. So I'm going to scratch wet weld. where it's going to go. And the back of the piece itself. I am going to use slip this time because the clay is leather hard. So I've got a little slip cup. Tap it on the back. Tap it where it's going to go. And then when you put it on, give it gentle pressure and a little wiggle to help it adhere. Okay. Now, this is where I like to use a wooden clay knife, or even sometimes the side of a needle tool, because it's difficult for me to fit my finger in here to weld this down into place. But sometimes instead you can use the rounded edge of a tool and you can fit that inside better to move the clay down from the piece that you're adding and onto the slab. Camera's in my way. Slide this forward a little bit. All right, so you know that your little piece is welded on properly when you cannot see the seam between the two pieces any longer. So down here at the end, I can still kind of see the seam. It's not really welded well, but down here in the middle, I can't see that seam anymore. Now this is fairly soft still, so I'm not going to worry too much about trying to clean it up. I'm just going to smooth off that sharp edge there at the top and take a little creative license here at the end and just kind of taper this off so that it's not so sharp. The more you can clean this up while you don't have tons of pieces that you're working with, the easier it'll be to fit your fingers. But I do know that sometimes it's easier to let it firm up a little bit more before you really go in and try to do your cleanup work. All right, now this piece here that I added also has that slab texture, or the canvas texture. So I'm just gonna use my rib to help me get rid of that. All right, and I can keep cleaning that up, but that's not too bad for now. So then, according to my drawing here, I've got this area that is on either side of it is supposed to be just the surface of the clay. So I don't need to do anything with that. But there are little areas in here and on the outside that are white, which means I need to carve those areas. Do not try to carve unless your clay is leather hard. So mine is actually a little bit softer than I would like it to be. When you carve, it should come out almost like a ribbon. So if I start here and pull with the corner of the tool, you get these little shavings that look like little pieces of ribbon. That's what you want. I would not recommend going any more than half the thickness of the clay for carving. So these slabs are about 3/4, about somewhere between 1/4 and a 1/2 inch, like 3/8 of an inch roughly. So just about half of that for the carved areas. And like I said, this is easier for sure if your clay is a little bit firmer than mine is right now. These little shavings, try to keep like a pile of them so they don't end up on the floor. They will get stepped on and then we'll have a dust issue. They can just go in the reclaim when you're done. And you'll notice I'm not trying to take a ton of clay at a time, just a little bit, carve slowly. Now, some people like to leave their carved texture. That I would say depends on your design. If you've got something that's very flowy and fluid looking, then I would try to clean this up. If you've got something that's more geometric, then you could probably get away with leaving your carved texture. It's kind of a design choice. Just try to keep my edges nice still. Okay, now this is not the kind of project that should take you, a day to finish. This one should take a while so that it's really nice and neat and clean. Now, what if you have an area like I do where I've got two patterned areas that are touching one another? If that's the case, that's where you can use your needle tool, or you might choose to do like the tip of your wooden knife or one of the skewer tools, and you can draw those lines in between. So this area here would be raised up as well, and I just haven't cut that piece yet. But I can just subtly draw those lines on as well. My hands have dry clay all over them. Okay, so I wanted to take the time to make this video, a little bit less rushed, so that you can see it's a process. It's definitely not something that you should, sit down and hurry through. I'll keep working on this one over the next few days, and you can kind of see how it develops. All right. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, let me know.